Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrim. In today's video I want to take another look at Slice and Dice. As Slice and Dice, it's been a talent that has basically seen zero use, but with the changes coming in patch 7.1.5, let's take a look at Slice and Dice alone and see just how well it can function. Slice and Dice got changed in 7.1.5 to not only grant you 100% attack speed, but also grant you 50% increased energy regeneration. Now, this isn't as good of an energy regeneration that Roll the Bones can give you, but the attack speed is definitely much higher. It doesn't come with a leech effect, you can get cooldown reduction, you can get 25% extra crit, but it does give you a little bit more consistency in what kind of buffs that you can work with. Now, when you are playing Slice and Dice, one of the things you are going up is Mark for Death and Death from Above. For an Outlaw Rogue, Death from Above hasn't been the greatest option, and at least in PvE it has been somewhat of an AoE clearance, but in PvP it's been fairly useless. The question is, can Slice and Dice be a good alternative to Mark for Death, which comes with Roll the Bones, and can it be a good alternative to Death from Above? Slice and Dice, we're going to take a look at it from a PvE perspective and then talk a little bit about it from a PvP perspective. In the PvE part of the game, we're taking a look at the ability that allows you a little bit more consistency. With the nerfs that hit Outlaw Rogue, plus a few buffs, this ability works really well with Alacrity, and allows you to have, for the most part, consistent damage at all times. With Roll the Bones in a raid environment or dungeon environment, the fact that you are getting randomized buffs and the fact that you sometimes have to reroll buffs altogether almost pigeonholes you to have varying damage. Sometimes it has its highs, and sometimes it has its lows. But with Slice and Dice, you are able to keep up about 300k DPS, a little bit above 300k DPS, as long as you have somewhat of decent gear. And let's say the item level is around 870-ish, you're able to have 300k consistent without your burst. During your burst, you definitely do go to the ultimate highs, like just about every single other class. But then it kind of pigeonholes you to have long cooldowns, which is one of the things that I didn't really like about this playstyle. Another thing you don't get with Slice and Dice is a dynamic playstyle that changes based on the buffs that you are granted. And that is something that I do value and enjoy when it comes to playing Outlaw Rogue. When you are able to change your playstyle even by a little bit, it allows you a little bit more variety, especially in PvE. Another issue that you run into with Slice and Dice is the passive of Combat Potency ends up reacting a hell of a lot. You have 50% increased energy regeneration, you have 20% haste with Alacrity, and then Combat Potency is going off at random moments with your Mastery and offhand attacks. So in the end, you sometimes end up generating so much energy that you can't spend it, which is exciting. But it does force you to spam out Saber Slash and sometimes even ignore Pistol Shot altogether. And that's all you can really do. So there you are, spamming Saber Slash, ignoring Pistol Shot, Saber Slash up to 5 comp points or 6, depending if you're running Deeper Stratagem, and then run through. And then you do the same thing until your cooldowns are up, where you have a guarantee of Saber Slash run through over and over and over. So from a rating perspective, I think this is an optimistic change and an optimistic talent that you are probably going to end up running when it comes to Mythic Plus dungeons, Mythic raids, and any other forms of PvE. But you are going to be trading out a dynamic playstyle that changes and switches and shifts around for stability. So you are kind of sacrificing the fun aspect and the mechanic that makes Outlaw Rogues what they are with Roll the Bones. Now, is Slice and Dice better than DFA? I think it is, because DFA allows you that AoE burst onto targets, especially if you're running Mythic Plus, where there's a lot of NPCs stacked together and you just want to burst them down as quickly as possible. But with loss of DFA, you are gaining a ton of attack speed, which works hand in hand really well when it comes to your Blade Flurry, especially if you're dealing with many enemies. When it comes to Mark for Death, Slice and Dice definitely replaces Mark for Death. With the recent nerf to True Bearing, Roll the Bones is not quite as good, so Roll the Bones and Mark for Death combination is simply not quite as good for PvE in my opinion compared to Slice and Dice. But this is just my thoughts, my own opinions on how it's going to go, and I think a lot of players will go with stability and they will sacrifice the random RNG variety of Outlaw's Roll the Bones for PvE purposes. Now, how about PvE? I felt that for PvP, Roll the Bones and True Bearing before the nerf would end up being one of the key mechanics that kept Outlaw rogues afloat and viable for PvP. But with the nerf to true bearing, I feel that it is possible to try out Slice and Dice. What you are getting with Slice and Dice is more consistent pressure on your enemies, and maybe that's where Outlaw rogues will go. With a buff to Blunderbuss allowing you to play a pistol shot build of sorts, so you will be able to deal decent sustained damage to enemies with solid combo point and energy regeneration, but you are going to be stuck to the cooldown management. You're not going to have faster cooldowns, and enemies are going to be able to predict your burst. One of the advantages of Outlaw, which is not a lot, but one of them is the fact that you can get your offensive cooldowns back much faster and have a Adrenaline Rush available a lot more often. But when you think about it, most of your damage does come from your run-throughs, most of your damage does come from Plunder Armor, most of your damage does come from Trixing a friendly for 50% direct damage increase. Most of your damage does come from getting crit from Roll the Bones. Now, I'm not quite sure if Slice and Dice will be heavily used for PvP. I feel that Mark for Death still has some uses and it still does combo with True Bearing, but the fact that you can't get your defenses back up faster, I'm not quite sure. I could make this video talking a bit about some of the defensive issues that might come out in the future PvP for rogues, but I don't really want to make it about that. I want to talk about the effectiveness of Slice and Dice. Now, I tried Slice and Dice in different varied playstyles, and you can use it with Vigor for PvP, and it works fairly okay. You can use it with Deeper Stratagem, and it works decent. And for the most part, it's not that bad of an ability. But no matter what, I still can't say that the ability will be the go-to choice. It is definitely an option, especially with a buff to Alacrity, and if you're running a Vigor build, you might be able to get yourself in a point where you pop a Adrenaline Rush and spam a bunch of Saber Slashes into target, which is cool, the fact that so many are going off. But when you're playing with so many varied playstyles, like with all the buffs that you're able to get from Roll the Bones, it does give you a little bit more of a weird playstyle. It's a bit static, and for some people it's kind of boring, and I always thought that static playstyles are not quite as fun. I actually think that they might as well put Slice and Dice as the ability for us to start with, because if Roll the Bones is going to be possibly experimental, then it's best for us just to roll Slice and Dice as a default. So then we have an option to roll the Bones in case Roll the Bones becomes pretty good. Because if we are going for Roll the Bones, we gain an ability that might be somewhat subpar now, and we'll have Mark for Death, but that Mark for Death is going to equal out for a guaranteed Roll the Bone, guaranteed stun, or a now nerfed run through. But if we get Slice and Dice and Mark for Death, then at least we're getting a decent combination of Roll the Bones and a Mark for Death for CC, damage, or even a Slice and Dice. But if a rogue decides that Slice and Dice is no longer good enough and they would rather play with Roll the Bones for all the buffs that it offers, and they find useful utilities in those buffs, then I feel like Roll the Bones is going to be able to speak for itself because of the variety of different buffs that it offers. And maybe it might give Blizzard an incentive to buff Roll the Bones or redesign it completely. But I do believe that maybe with all the changes, Slice and Dice might need to be baseline because it ends up sounding like the better option. So if rogues are going to be pigeonholed into being forced to pick Slice and Dice, then if they give us an option of choice, Roll the Bones should be the option of choice rather than Slice and Dice. Because I'd rather have Slice and Dice and Mark for Death than Roll the Bones and Mark for Death, at least for the time being on PTR. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think about Slice and Dice. Do you think it's going to be any good for PvE or PvP? In the comments below. Thank you all, and I'll see you guys in the next one.